friend.
To the How-To Heretic.
I'm Uncle Mark.
I'm Uncle Dan.
And I'm Uncle Doug.
And this is your user's guide to life on the fucking outside.
That's right. Leaving religion is the first step into a larger, better world.
But it can also be a scary world. Things work differently now.
Never fear. That's why we're here.
We're your audio uncles. And with help from good friends and experts in all sorts of fields.
We're going to share the stories and seek the knowledge to build a great life.
After all, you only get the one that we know of, so you better make the most of it.
Boom shakalaka. Guys.
Hey.
Well, hello.
What's happening?
All the things.
Yeah. Everything is happening. That's what.
Yeah.
State fairs, asteroid strikes.
You know, as we
garbage
speak,
strikes.
As we speak,
Yeah.
there's no answer as to who won the Super Bowl.
No.
And yet, by the time our listeners hear this, they will know.
Well, that's the same for the
Should
Iowa
they care
caucuses.
Oh, there's that too.
This is an insane confluence of political and Americana. The Iowa caucuses, the Super Bowl, and the State of the Union will have all happened between the sound of our voices going out into the ether and them hitting the eardrums of our non-patron listeners.
And they'll know if Punxsutawney Phil saw his shadow or not. It's a crazy time.
And Trump might be acquitted at the same time. Holy God, there's a lot going on.
I was going to say the big weather rat came out of his log. So that's all happened. Guys, come on.
What a time to be alive.
An eventful epoch in human history this is. And if it were it not eventful enough, today we have a show of shows.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna take us to the graveyard of the gods and pull out a fun tradition that goes along with it.
And then I'm going to play our favorite game, Square That Circle, about Christian apologetics. Hooray!
And I am going to take a fun and wonderful trip through the body counts of the 20th century. So join us, won't you?
It's only fun.
Yeah.
It's only fun. And Uncle Dan, I think we're maybe starting a new thing this week.
Yeah, so y'all, if you become a patron of this show, which many people
already
have, or you already are, we've got the big announcement is that we are starting to do patron-only content. It's like its own little show just for the patrons. The rest of you can go screw.
Hey, now, the rest of you can become patrons.
Yeah, exactly. You can be. It's easy enough to get your hands on. All you have to do is become a patron. We'll tell you all about that at the end of the show, or in the middle of the show, rather. And but it's just go to howtoheretic.com. It's super easy.
It's so easy.
Yeah, so do that, and then when we're not sure how exactly we're doing it, it might drop this week or next week, but it's happening. It's happening. So
and it will be for the most part weekly.
Yep.
Yeah, for the most part weekly, and part of it will be responding to some lovely correspondence we get from you guys. So if you are a patron and you want us to talk about a subject, and we'll try to get to it in that segment, in the patron only stuff, just make sure you somehow tell us in your email that you are a patron.
Yeah. And we will do exactly zero research for it.
That's right. Which is how we do the whole show.
Which is kind of our thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So without further ado, let us do the voodoo we do.
Uncle Mark.
Mm-hmm.
Namaste.
Yes, namaste. Oh, yeah, this is our segment where we talk about Gwyneth Paltrow's exciting new Netflix show.
Which I did watch an episode of.
You got through an episode? I tried and couldn't.
Oh, they're dumb.
Yeah, I did hear that the Gamboys are reviewing it next week.
Yeah. Oh my God!
So that should be fun.
The first episode was just they just go and do mushrooms.
Yeah,
and they do it. They do it in this way that's like they might as well. They're making it seem like it's this big like ayahuasca ceremony, and it's like, dude, it's just mushrooms, man.
Plus, people I know have taken drugs, and they've told me about it.
Mm-hmm. You've definitely never ever in your life.
And
none of your hosts have ever done anything.
The last thing I want, say somebody would want when they're high on mushrooms is like extreme proximity to other strange people. But that's just me. Yeah. So, Uncle Dan, I think you have something that originates from the true Eastern philosophy.
Oh my goodness, yes. Because it comes from there, I feel like Gwyneth will now listen to this segment.
Yes.
Okay, so history is tricky. It's replete with very confusing moments where good guys do horrible things and horrible people do good things, and good intentions lead to disaster, and horrible cruelty leads to a wonderful discovery.
This is going to be a theme of the show, by the way. Just strap in.
If it hasn't been the theme of the show since its inception.
Yes.
The fact is that nothing is simple when it comes to humans, and yet we crave simplicity, and that's why Americans were all taught since grade school that Christopher Columbus was a hero, and we're all shocked when we're told he was actually an idiotic monster on How to Heretic Episode 55 Coming to America. So, try not to be too confused when, a little later in this segment, I make heroes out of invading Muslim hordes and colonialist Christian missionaries. But first, a story of Hindu gods.
Way.
Isn't that fun?
Cody dropped the sitar in right there.
Yeah, do a sitar riff.
Yeah.
As
Ravi
always,
Shankar.
I will remind our listeners that Hindu stories are a confusing mess because every time everybody is reincarnated or an avatar of somebody else, and you spend half of your time reading the story of other incarnations of a god so that you'll understand why it makes so much sense that this god doesn't like mushrooms or whatever.
Yeah.
Also,
a billion believers and opinions vary.
Yes, indeed. And the stories vary. Every Hindu story has 250 different versions that frequently contradict each other. So don't at me if the version I'm telling is not the one that you know. Yeah. It's one of them.
Get your shit together, Hindus.
That's why Christianity is the true religion.
That's
because
right.
That never happens.
That was the great innovation of monotheism. Is that like you can kind of keep the story down to a single narrative or whatever.
Narrative consistency.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So yes, this is one of the stories, or I'm mixing them all up. Shut up, I just read it somewhere, okay? Anyway, I'm going to try to simplify the story and not get too deep into the karmic weeds. Suffice it to say, time is a flat circle, and all we are is dust in the wind. So, once upon a time, there was an Indian king named Daksha, who may have been a god, or at least the son of a god. He was the son of Lord Brahma. And he had some daughters. Now, his wife, Prasuti, being the good lady that she was, bore him 24 girls. Now, 24 daughters may sound like, enough to you and me, but Daksha was not satisfied, and he and his other wife, Panchajani, nailed it, really put the effort in and had 62 more.
Holy shit. All daughters?
Daughters. Daughters.
Damn.
Shut up. They're all girls.
Wow.
However, Daksha found that every now and then he was still able to use a bathroom in the morning, which was totally unacceptable, so he whipped up another 60 daughters for good measure.
Oh, Jesus.
He was a busy boy.
Yeah.
For those keeping track at home, that was 146 little apples of Daksha's eye. And, well, it's that last one that we're going to discuss today. When Daksha had only 145 daughters, he and his wife Prasuti were really jonesing for that one more.
Yeah, they were feeling like empty nesters at that point.
Yeah, and counting. 145 and counting is the name of their reality show.
Yeah.
Brahma, his dad, told them to go meditate on the goddess Adi Parashakti. So they went into the forest, and after a long time of meditating, pretty sure that's a euphemism for something in this case, Adi Parashakti appeared to them, and they told her that they wanted another daughter. Or I don't know if they said another. They might have been tricking her and saying, and not letting her know that they already had a few. Anyway, she dug their vibe. She was into it, and she agreed to be born again as their daughter.
Wow.
So Prasuti got preggo, and shaboom, reborn goddess daughter number 146. And they named her Sati. Sati was I guess a good kid. I don't know. But when she got older, she was enthralled by the stories of Lord Shiva, who was a pretty big-time god, which she had been told since childhood. She was so captivated that she eventually decided that she was going to marry that fine hunk of god meat, and the only problem with that was that Shiva had a massive emo streak to him. He was an ascetic who would hang out alone in caves and listen to The Cure and Depeche Mode all day.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
He was going through a phase.
You know that, Mark. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So emo, yeah.
So Sati knew she was going to have to do something special to get his attention. And she was Indian, so just dyeing her hair black wasn't going to be remotely goth enough.
Right.
So she left the comforts of her dad's luxury palace and went to live in the woods. And she went full Maggie Gyllenhaal in Secretary. Basically punished herself until he would notice her. Which is the beginning of any healthy love story and doesn't foreshadow any troubles ahead, right?
Yeah.
Basically, so she finally gave up, and so she took on an ascetic life herself, and got increasingly ascetic. She gave up more and more of the comforts of life, and when she finally gave up that one last habit of eating that whole leaf every day and stopped food altogether, Lord Shiva finally said, "You know what? I think this girl's really got something." Oh. And they were married.
Oh, huzzah.
Yay.
And mazel tov, you crazy kids.
The moral of that story is eating disorders work out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was a tasteful wedding in a sexy stone-clad dungeon with candles everywhere and skulls and a big snake. She wore a black dress with a lace-up corset bodice and a black veil. He wore a black suit with a red tie. You know, nerdy but sweet.
They were metal before metal was cool.
Totally.
Yeah.
Anyway, Sati's dad, Daksha, was not happy with any of this. He didn't like Shiva at all with his gauged ears and tattoos and whatnot. So, when he decided to throw a bonfire party and invite all the gods, he pointedly didn't invite Shiva and Sati. Well, Shiva was actually pretty cool with it and told Sati that they'd just stay at home and listen to Nine Inch Nails. But Sati really wanted to see her family, so she decided to crash the party, which is stupid. You never crash a party you weren't invited to if you're hoping for a happy result. That's just life, Uncle Dan life lessons. Anyway,
hard-earned knowledge for your uncles, guys.
Yes, hard learned.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
I have been kicked out of many an Applebee's. Anyway, Daksha was pissed to see her. He went off in front of his guests about how ungrateful she was and why can't she be more like her 145 sisters, etc., etc. And she took all that, but when he started in on Shiva, how he was a stupid god and would never amount to anything, and she was like, you just haven't given him a chance. He's a poet.
God, Dad.
And her dad was like, he was fired from his job at Target, for God's sakes. And she was like, he's misunderstood. Anyway, she couldn't take it anymore. She was being torn apart. She had to choose between her family and her husband, and it was all too much for her. So in a last act of crazed young person lashing out, she screamed, I hope I get a decent dad in the next life, and threw herself on the bonfire.
Oh.
Wow.
Killing herself and ruining a perfectly lovely party.
Drama.
Very dramatic, yeah.
Right? Unfortunately, yeah, she was a little extra. Can we just admit this? Unfortunately for Daksha, Shiva had just finished watching The Crow after polishing off a flagon of mulled wine and was in a very dark and violent mood when he heard the news about his wife. So he plucked out 2 locks of his hair and threw them to the ground, and they became Virabhadra and Bhadrakali. Nailed them. Who were some violent motherfuckers, and went and killed everybody at the party, including decapitating Daksha.
Oh.
The next day, when the hangover wore off, Shiva felt bad, though, and apparently brought everybody back to life. Things had gotten a little cray, though, and they couldn't find Daksha's head, so Shiva plopped a goat's head on him, and everything was right as rain.
We good, bro?
Yeah. Everything cool?
I like that Hindus look at their gods like Legos.
Yeah.
It's all right. Just put that there. That's fine.
But we'll just pop that off and we'll just throw it onto them. Shiva did not, however, bring Sati back to life, so that's weird. The coda to this story is that Shiva started walking the earth, carrying her burned corpse around with him everywhere he went, which was super gross.
All right.
Yeah. Awkward.
just weird, and really just very unhealthy psychologically speaking. So it became apparent that he was just not coming out of his funk at all. So Vishnu, his buddy, decided he was sick of his friend moping around and used his bladed discus to chop Sati's body into pieces. And now there are shrines all over India where those pieces supposedly fell.
Huh.
And that's the story of Sati. Except
he used a discus?
Yeah, he had like this disc with a blade on it.
Like Tron.
Like the Frisbee of Doom.
Yeah,
Or
okay,
Kroll.
cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
They
very much
didn't
like
make
Kroll.
that up. That shit's been around for forever. So that's the story of Sati, except that she then became Parvati in her next life and married Shiva again, but that's a story for another episode.
Wow.
Well, we all know that couple, right?
Right?
On again, off again, reincarnated,
Dying and becoming somebody else and then going right
carrying
back
her
to
burned
the
corpse
guy.
around.
Fuck.
I think carrying her burned corpse around is the Hindu version of standing outside somebody's window with a boombox over your head.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
But that is not the end of this segment. That's the end of that story, but not the end of this segment because there's another Sati. And this isn't a goddess or a person, but a practice.
Oh.
One that went on for literally thousands of years. We have recordings of it going back to the 2nd or 3rd century BCE, but it was probably practiced long before. Sati is the practice of... The practice is the lovely tradition where a widow whose husband has recently died, realizing that she is totally worthless now, throws herself... she decides to follow him into the afterlife and throws herself onto his funeral pyre.
Oh.
Onto his pyre?
Yeah.
Onto his burning pyre?
Correct. And kills
God.
herself.
Oh, my God.
Not directly related, really, to the story of Sati the goddess, who wasn't a widow at all.
Right.
But that's what it turned into. So originally it was meant to be this noble and glorious act of voluntary devotion, but they quickly found that most women only volunteer to do it if you force them to. So that's what they did.
Oh, no.
Don't worry, though. The practice was banned by the Mughals. In 1582, Emperor Akbar issued a proclamation that no woman could be forced to die just because her husband had died.
He said, "It's a trap."
That's right. God damn you.
Someone got that.
Yeah, no, we all got it. We just didn't want it.
Oh, you're welcome.
So, just to reiterate, the Muslim conqueror of Indian lands was like, you guys, this is barbaric. You're way too misogynist for me.
Wow.
So, that's a thing. But instead of Muslim tolerance spreading to their Hindu neighbors, kind of the opposite seems to have happened. Muslims started getting into Sati as well.
Oh, no.
So, yes, sure, people would shake their heads sadly about it at a party, but when they heard that a woman was going to do it, everybody came out for the event. The practice grew again for a while, but then another Mughal emperor, Aurangzeb, banned it again in 1663, ordering that no officials in any Mughal territory were to allow a woman to burn. So, great.
Hey, progress.
Yeah. And then he died. And I guess they gradually started doing it again, or maybe not gradually, I don't know. When the asshole Europeans started conquering and taking over India, they also banned the practice. The Portuguese banned it in Goa, the Dutch and the French banned it in their little territories. The Danes were a little more chill about women being forced to burn themselves and allowed it in their tiny areas until the 1800s.
Oh, my God.
Then there were the British. They toyed with banning it. Individual important British officers every now and then would stroke their mustaches and disapprovingly say, "Now see here, we oughtn't to do that. It isn't proper."
Yeah.
But it wasn't until 1798 that the first formal British ban took place, and that was only in the city of Calcutta.
Jesus.
More bans followed, often as a result of Christian missionaries spreading word of the disgusting practice. But the bans were only effective when there were people around to enforce them, and the British didn't control all of India anyway for a lot of that time. Anyway, fast forward a little bit to the first and only pan-Indian ban of the practice of sati, which was the Prevention of Sati Act of Checking my notes. Carry the 2. 1987!
Oh, my God.
Fuck. Wow.
This made it illegal and punishable by death to force a woman to commit sati. Mind you,
Wow.
there are still reported incidents of sati, so it hasn't gone away entirely. And I get the sense that there's still a little sort of bubbling admiration for a woman willing to do it. But at least it's no longer expected of women, and to force it is considered, bad.
So if you force a woman to burn,
Yeah.
you're put to death, which means your wife is forced to burn.
Right.
And the person who made
just
that
never
happen is put
ends.
to
It's a
death.
long, yeah. You have to keep going until you find a man who doesn't have a wife, and then it stops.
Well, if the How to Heretic stands for anything, folks, I think we can conclusively say it stands for consensual sati, right? You have to establish consent
Yes.
before you force a
exactly.
woman to burn to death because her husband died.
So there you go. It only took thousands of years, but progress.
We kind of got there.
What a fucking weird funeral that must be.
Jesus.
Yeah.
So, all right.
So
well,
there you go.
congratulations, India.
Yeah. Let's all look to India for all of our ideas about how the world should work and what humans should do.
Well, with that,
Let's
Let's move it
move
on.
on.
do it.
Uncle Dan.
It's the game show. I don't know. I wanted to do a game show guy voice for a second.
Do you like to humiliate yourself for cash and prizes?
That's
I think Uncle Bob Barker Doug has something for us today.
come on down.
I do, as a matter of fact. Let's spin the wheel.
It's exciting.
Well, dear uncles, it is the well-established position of this podcast that books that are considered by some to be holy, quote unquote, are in every case not.
Yeah.
In every case, these ancient myths are
Fuck War and Peace.
yes, oh indeed. These ancient myths are problematic, contradictory, and have been the cause of most of the suffering that the human race has inflicted upon itself.
Also a theme of the show today. You'll get it.
Yeah, right. Not only that, but in most cases, the stories that make up these holy books are badly written, one-dimensional, and so goddamn stupid that most children could come up with better material.
And do regularly.
Don't believe me? Please go to YouTube and look up 3-year-old British girl Fen Rosenthal's incredible song, Dinosaurs in Love,
Oh my God, I was going to say that. It's so great.
accompanied by her father on the piano. It contains more morality, poetry, and character development than the entirety of the Pentateuch.
Yes.
We'll have
Yes.
to put a
They
try
eat
to
fruit and cucumber.
Yeah, it's adorable.
We'll have to try to remember
Yes.
to put a link in the show notes.
Yeah. Yet, because this is clearly the worst timeline, billions of our fellow great apes have decided to organize their lives to one degree or another around these stories. However, because we are pattern-seeking animals, and because most of these stories are incredibly self-contradictory, great effort has been expended over the centuries to give these stories some kind of internal consistency. These efforts are as pointless as they are entertaining, and have produced some of the most hilarious circular logic this side of the Matrix trilogy. So today, let's once again dive headfirst into the shallow end of the pool by playing our very occasional apologetics game, Square That Circle.
Bop, bop, now. Yeah.
So the rules are simple. I will lay out a problematic story from Scripture and give you three possible apologetics for it. Only one is real, and you have to guess which. If you guess successfully, the prize is an Arby's gift card that a pastor threw at me in a Target parking lot when it turned out I was not a 17-year-old college freshman. So
When you were leaning over to tie your shoe.
we will be focusing this week on evangelical apologetics about the Old Testament because for some reason I'm on an Old Testament kick.
Yeah.
Evangelicals have yet to hit on the Catholics' universal get-out-of-jail-free card about the Bible, that God is a mystery, so shut the fuck up.
Yes.
We will leave Mormon apologetics alone for this week because I'm saving those for my birthday. First up, we have the perennial problem in the Old Testament of God changing his mind or expressing regret. According to all the monotheistic religions, God is immutable, all-knowing, and all-powerful. It is difficult to reconcile those facts with the fact that several times in the Old Testament, God is deceived, his plans are thwarted, he regrets an action, or straight up changes his mind.
Or loses a wrestling match.
Or just to a draw.
Right.
Or just throws a snit about a statue, but whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Here is just a partial list of those occurrences. Genesis 6:6, Exodus 32:14, 1 Samuel 15:10 through 11, 1 Chronicles 21:15, Jeremiah 18:7 through 11, Jeremiah 26:19, Ezekiel 33:13 through 15, and Amos 7:16. That's
But other than that,
consistent.
Yeah.
yes.
According to carm.org, that is Christian Apologetics and Research Ministry,
Oh, Carm.
how do evangelical Christians square that circle? Is it A, when gardening, your intention is to always maintain a beautiful lawn or garden, yet sometimes you pass weeds by and other times you pull them? Did you change your mind? Or are you simply letting weeds grow to a point where it's worth your time to pull them? God is looking at the whole garden, and you are just looking at the grass around you.
That's so awful. It must be real.
Oh,
but
my
that's the next
God.
one.
Yeah. It's so
Yeah.
good. It's so good.
All right. Is it B? In some translations of the Bible, the word, quote, change, as in the Lord changed his mind, is translated as relent or repent, as in the Lord relented or the Lord repented. Now, the Hebrew word for relent or repent is nashim, which in some places in ancient Israel could also be translated as comfort or ease. Not sure what the point is here, but hopefully you have forgotten about the question.
That is also a very convincing apologeticing.
Right.
Because it is an absolute non sequitur misdirect,
Right.
it could also be very, very real.
All right.
Yeah.
Or is it C? You know that scene in Mrs. Doubtfire where Robin Williams' tits have caught on fire, the water is boiling over, and he's forgotten to put his makeup on, forcing him to cram his face into a cake so it looks like he's wearing a skin-healing mask? You try running the universe for a while and see if you don't fuck some shit up, you ungrateful assholes. So,
Okay, so C is the only one that makes any kind of actual logical sense. So I'm eliminating that one completely.
I'm going to go with A.
all right.
I like A a lot. I think I'm going to go with A as well.
The gardening metaphor
Yes.
was made up by me.
Good one.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was good.
I swear I should get hired by some of these
You should
apologetics websites.
write a
Carm.
damn book and then write
we
a
know you're
companion
listening.
piece afterwards.
We know you're listening, Carm.
I am
Hit us up.
cheap, believe me. Next up.
Yeah, you can outbid Wonder Bible.
We have the recurring problem of the one true God speaking with others about what to do and how to do it. This problem pops up right at the beginning of the Bible when God is presumably alone, when in Genesis 1:26 he says, quote, "And God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness."
Right.
Although this happens several times in the Bible, it's never clarified who God is talking to and how there could be an us when there is no other being like enough to God to be considered in the same league. So,
Or to even exist at that point in Genesis.
Exactly. So, according to neverthirsty.org, how do evangelical Christians square that circle? Is it A?
What, is that a porn site for incels?
No,
Like,
neverthirsty.com is the porn site. Neverthirsty.org is the apologetic site.
Oh, right. I got to correct that.
I make that mistake 3 or 4 times a day.
Yeah.
Is it A? One cannot understand the Bible by reading only the first few pages, in the same sense that if one were to read the first few pages of say, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, one would not understand that story. Sure, there's some confusing stuff at the beginning, but by the time you get to the end, you'll have been so confused by so much more that you won't even remember what had you confused in the first place. Is it?
I like that one. That's
a good one. The
straight up.
classic redirect.
Is it B?
Yeah.
It's the royal we, man. Or is it C? Our mortal language lacks the complexity to properly describe how an omnipotent God perceives the universe that he sees every part and every moment of simultaneously. The best we can do is approximate it, and what we are left with are moments like these. When we all speak the eternal tongue, we will understand.
Okay, that's
It's
again
totally C.
that one's too good for them.
Okay.
So
I think it's totally C. That is like, shut up, you can't know.
yeah, I can't go with that one. It just seems too reasonable and too correct. So I'm going to go with, what was A?
A was you can't understand a book by only reading the first few pages.
And what was B?
It's the royal we, man.
A.
Uncle Dan got it.
Yes.
What?
No, it's the best apologetic they have is like, just keep reading and shut up.
Fuck, I should know this stuff, right? This is kind of what we do. So, okay, great.
Well, it's so funny because the other two for me were like ways that I would have justified it.
Right, exactly.
And I'm like, yeah, that's working too hard.
Makes too much sense.
I feel like it's working.
Yeah.
I feel like
All right. 1-0, Dan.
That's exactly. All right. And finally, we come to one of the world's biggest criticisms of the Old Testament. the genocide in the land of Canaan. The reason that I have to specify which genocide is, of course, because there were many. But here we have the fan
which
favorite.
genocide in the land of Canaan are you talking about?
Exactly. Well, let's focus on the one in Deuteronomy 20:16 through 17,
That was a good one.
where God gives Moses and his crew the marching orders, quote, "But of the cities of these people, which the Lord thy God doth give thee for an inheritance, thou shalt save alive nothing that breatheth, but thou shalt utterly destroy them, namely the Hittites and the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, as the Lord thy God hath commanded." So,
What did the Perizzites ever do?
I know. Now it seems a little
They're
bit
in
harsh.
league with the Jebusites.
Right.
I guess.
It seems a little harsh that a loving God would command his people to slaughter all living in a land, old and young, male and female, toddler and infant, and that they should also murder all the animals, and that this kind of command might be misused, or I guess correctly used, by murderous despots for the next 3,000 years or so to justify any atrocity that comes to mind. And that such a passage might call into question the central morality of the entire book and its usefulness in a global multi-ethnic society. So, according to probe.org, yes, probe.org,
Again, don't go to the .com version of that either.
These people have no fucking sense of irony. They just have no idea what they do to themselves on a daily basis.
So how do evangelical Christians square that circle? Is it A? Well, it turns out that the Canaanites were pretty slimy and idolatrous people and had been given ample opportunity to repent, but had kept to their polytheist ways, so, kill them all. When all you've got,
that's actually called the Jews, but never mind.
When all you've got is a hammer, make lemonade. Is it B? In Genesis 12:7, God had promised the land to the Israelites. The fact that the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites were already there was just dumb luck on their part, and rather than try and live peacefully with them or even try to force them out, it was just cleaner and easier to massacre the whole lot of them. Or was it C? If the Israelites had simply emigrated and tried to live peacefully with the Canaanites and all the other ites, they were so corrupting that they would have led the Israelites astray, and so because the Israelites were such weak-willed weather vanes, everybody had to die. The fact that the Israelites spend the entirety of the rest of the Bible being led astray by basically everybody is a plot hole in need of its own apologetic. So,
here's the thing. Can we just first point out that none of these are worthy apologetics? Like, none of these actually address the central problem at all.
That's true.
So it doesn't
feel
matter
like you
which one is true.
Well, you need a really solid argument for genocide.
Yes.
You really have to lay some pipe to get me to go there with you.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with A.
And none of those do it.
You going with A?
What was B, Doug? What was B again?
B was that God had promised the land to somebody else, and so if you happen to be there, sucks to be you.
I see. I think C.
All right. I'm sorry. It was all of the above. What they lacked in a moral argument, they made up for in several arguments.
Right. Yes. None of which work.
Yeah. And since you're not technically tied, there's still a bonus question.
Okay.
It's related to the last question. The idea that God would command his chosen people to kill pregnant women and therefore their fetuses is a bit of a sticky wicket for all those pro-life rubes banging their Bibles against abortion clinic fences.
Yeah.
And because only 4 chapters after that genocide in Deuteronomy 24:16, God says, quote, "The fathers shall not be put to death for their children, neither their children shall be put to death for the fathers. Every man shall be put to death for his own sin." The good people at probe.org decided to throw more at the wall and see what sticks. So how do they square the circle of divinely mandated abortion? A, the orphan children would grow up and eventually avenge their parents, so murdering fetuses is justified. It was better for B. It was better for the Canaanite children to die young and innocent before they grew up and inevitably engaged in the sinful ways of their parents, so the murder of fetuses is justified. Or was it C, God's inscrutable, you're a mere mortal, shut up. In this case, and this case alone, the murdering of fetuses is justified.
All of the above. It's all. Those are all very, very good answers.
Yeah, it sounds pretty all of the above-y.
It's all of the above.
You fucking ding-dongs.
It just... I mean, to be fair, how do you justify genocide?
You don't.
You don't.
There's no way you get to, so...
Good people don't try.
Yeah.
Yeah, that will be a theme of this show. And wow, these people vote. That people believe and say these things vote, and they live among us. So I guess we just have to vote in greater numbers.
Well, Uncle Dan, you won the game. I'm going to get you my Arby's card out of my prison wallet, and
Please,
it's all yours.
please don't. Please, you can keep that for your own curly fries.
All right.
Well, that was a fun show, Doug. Dan, you can collect your prize. Promotional consideration given to Eastern Airlines. Mr. Doug's Uncle Doug's wardrobe provided by Botany 500. For all you over 50s out there, you'll enjoy that.
Yeah, exactly. I'll take the dinette set for $4,500.
Yeah, $4,500. The ceramic cheetah for $9,000. All right, well, that was a fun walk down stupid lane.
Yes, indeed. Thanks, Uncle Doug. We're going to go wash our eyeballs out with bleach and come right back.
Yep. Bye.
Fellas,
Well, hello.
we teased it at the beginning of the show.
We did.
There's new reason to be a patron of this show, and that is content, baby. We got more content. It's we're just throwing it at you left and right.
All the coughing, mouth noises, and farts your uncles edit out of the show, we're putting into one place.
We edit any of them out? I don't think we do.
Can you imagine what the show would be like if we left them in?
If we left them in. Yeah, you guys only
Jesus
hear
Christ.
the ones that squeak through the editing process.
It would sound like the whale CD I bought when did I tell you about the whale CD I bought when I was a kid in LA and I was really stressed out.
Yeah.
And I thought I was so sad. I was in the closet. I was so poor, and I bought what I thought was a whale song CD because it was what you did in the early '90s to relax. And it turns out it was like some biologist who'd recorded whales just doing their shit, doing their business. It was like. It would sound like that CD.
Oh my god!
So yeah, it was very relaxing.
So anyway, we've got the new patron only content. We're calling it Whale Song.
Yes.
No, we're actually calling it the H2H all access backstage pass.
That's right. You get
whale cough.
You get your favorite uncles, raw and uncut.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately is
uncircumcised.
not the gay way of saying uncut. We're
Yeah.
all three not in that boat. But the rest of it is true. And the way that you do that is you become a patron, and we have a whole bunch of people to thank who have done just that. So we shall begin with Matthew, Andromeda, Okay, I will.
Oh, come on!
pronounce
You are
this.
such a bad nerd. Kwisatz Haderach. Jesus, Dan.
Oh, they got the Kwisatz Haderach.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, I don't know what that is, you guys. I am
Dude,
a bad nerd.
guys, please, if you're going to do it, add it, Dan.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I do have a Twitter account. I will not check it.
Tweet at my brother, Baron.
I got that. Anyway.
Okay, let's keep going. Caleb, Leslie, Ian from Wine Country, Helen, Rob, another Wesley. Oh no, Wesley, not Leslie. And Uncle Mark, I need you to do a saint for Rusty Trombone.
Oh.
Well, as if Rusty Trombone is not their own saint, obviously. But so, Rusty Trombone. That's a weird. Is it of the East Clifford trombones? Your saint, obviously, and I'm peering through the mists. Your saint is Saint Spleen Leaker of San Juan Capistrano, who is the patron saint, obviously, of Megatron. Dental implant printed advertisements. And any lawsuit involving 2 or more yoga instructors.
Wow. That good stuff.
Not needed often, but boy, when you need him, her.
Yeah, you better call on him.
Veronica Spleenlaker. When you need her. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Rusty. And then I need to give a saint to Lindsay. And Lindsay, your patron saint is Saint Rod of Lower Boca Raton, and Saint Rod is the patron saint of fan boats, of large and ungainly shoes, and the patron saint of masks that you wear when you try to rob a place. So, good job, Lindsay. You definitely did not get ripped off then.
I feel like that's St. Florida Man, except we all know St. Florida Man does not wear shoes.
Or a mask.
Yeah.
All right. And Uncle Doug,
Yes.
you are tasked with a heaven. Now, the heaven is the most glorious thing that one of our patrons can get. And this one is for, and I don't know if you're aware of this, his whole name is Pele Dale, which is a Mormon deep cut going real
It
deep.
is. Oh, my God.
So, Pele Dale, here comes your heaven.
Well, I got to apologize, Dale. I only got the second half of your name. So, like God himself that doesn't get all the information, the heaven I catered for you is probably not going to fit. So, Dale.
You know what? Your heaven's fucking fit. That's the deal.
They all fit. They are tailor-made to fit you. And if they don't fit you, cut something off until they do.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, Dale, there's an old pilot's axiom that goes, never miss a chance to hit the head, which of course means use every bathroom every time. Now, while this axiom applies very much to Uncle Mark,
yes,
it's
very
another
much.
Like so much. It's
So much.
weird.
That's why we have like 4 breaks during the show, guys.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's another pilot's axiom that applies to you. Never let your takeoffs outnumber your landings. In other words, never let your exhales outnumber your inhales. Unfortunately, try as you might, one day, Dale, hopefully many years from now, air will rush from your lungs one last time, and your earthly cares will fade into the darkness. As your immortal soul drifts through the liquid black, you feel a warmth on your skin, followed by a faint glow, like the rising of the sun, which increases by degrees until it overwhelms your senses. Soon your eyes become accustomed to the light, and shapes dissolve into a skyline backed by a deep blue sky and rimmed with bright red hills dotted with specks of green. As your eyesight improves, you notice palm tree-lined streets and countless emerald pools of water next to countless white stucco and red tile roof resorts. Is this heaven, you think to yourself? No, it's Scottsdale. Now, I know the town was named after U.S. Army Chaplain Winfield Scott, and that the Dale in the name refers to the rocky Mazatzal Peak to the northeast. But what is God going to do? Send you to Dale, Indiana, or Dale, Norway? No! Your name is Dale, you're going to Scottsdale. And the fact of the matter is that every frat boy in the greater Phoenix area refers to it as the Dale. And hey, as you stroll the sun-baked streets, you realize how much worse you could have it. You will never be cold, like in, say, Norway. And let me just re-emphasize, you will never be cold. After enough time passes, you won't even be able to remember what cold was like. Only that you really miss it, like a person who went colorblind at 18 trying to remember the color green. And you notice there are a lot of college-age kids, after all. There's a ton of colleges in the area, and you notice a lot of jazzies, because after all, this is a retirement community. Okay, you can live with that. College kids are fun, and retirees have lots of stories. You'll make the best of it. There's one more important part of the pecking order that you need to be aware of. Although Dale is a pretty common name, there are per capita twice as many Scotts. So, you are outnumbered by men named Scott 2-1. This wouldn't be a problem, except that seeing as their first name comes first, they get preferential treatment at restaurants, theaters, and museums. Well, at least there's some pretty fun nightlife. After all, the motto of Scottsdale is, and this is true, the West's most western town.
What?
And so
It's not even true. That's not even close.
Not even close.
And so for a couple thousand years, you happily partied up with at all 10, yes, 10 senior frogs.
Oh, God.
The aforementioned college kids. However, having to watch a never-ending parade of white girls named Megan slam shot after shot of Vanilla Cuervo and then hold each other's hair in the bathroom begins to lose its luster. No matter you think, I'll visit Frank Lloyd Wright's Taliesin West. Is that how you say it?
Taliesin.
Taliesin West, his winter home in Scottsdale. And yes, it is an architectural wonder, but unfortunately you can only take guided tours, and you find yourself iced out of tour after tour as senior citizens, and dudes named Scott get all the spots. Fine, you'll go golfing. You were not great at it in life, but you have nothing but time now, so let's go try it out. Sorry, Dale, there's just one caveat. You can get a tee time anytime you want on the myriad pro-level courses, but you have to golf with at least one trump. That's just because your heaven happens to overlap with theirs. Sorry.
That really sucks.
Dawn is mercifully blind drunk by hole 8.
See what your patronage gets you.
Dawn is blind drunk by hole 8, but always gets his second win by hole 15, and projectile vomits wine coolers and shrimp cocktails by hole 17. Eric is a bit better, but has a tendency to wander off into the brush, and you can't proceed without him. Truthfully, Jared and Ivanka are the best partners. They don't even golf. They just sit in practiced poise with blank looks on their faces. But man, it's creepy. Fine, no golf. Hiking? Sorry, the modest hills of the McDowell Range lay outside the city limits and are off limits to you. I'm afraid you will have to make do with what the West's most western town has to offer: drinks with Megan, museums with Scots, or golf with Trumps. As you ponder these options, you cannot help but wish your parents had named you Paris or Honolulu. Just to remember, it could be worse. They could have named you Provo or Mogadishu. Enjoy, Dale.
Wow. That's
Well, so I think we have definitely encouraged a certain uptick in patronage with that.
yeah, exactly. What we've done is we've made sure that everybody wants to be a $10 patron now.
Yeah. And you can be, despite that. You could just go to howtoheretic.com, go to the Support Us tab, hit that. There's numbers, there's words. You know how they work.
Yeah.
Nobody knows how money works. We're off the gold standard. Nothing fucking matters anymore. Just pour it in there. It's all binary.
Just
right?
Turn your piggy bank upside down and jingle all the coins onto your keyboard. It'll work.
Money's a fucking neoliberal concept, man.
And don't forget to give us 5 stars wherever 5 stars can be given, because only 5 stars can be given.
Indeed.
And don't forgive that either. So
yes. Okay. Let's move on.
Hey, Uncle Dan.
Yes, Uncle Doug.
You seem like you're in a good mood.
Are you threatening me?
I'm not.
But let me fix that for you.
I feel like last week we all got the good news that we don't have to accept Hitler as one of us in terms of atheists.
We don't have to.
We don't.
No.
We can if we want. The Christians sure want us to accept him.
He's not all up in our Sudetenland. That's that. I think we laid that to rest. But
now, Uncle Mark, I guess you're going to try and ruin some other stuff. Though.
Just bum us the fuck out. Why
well,
not?
I think it's going to come full circle. I think it's going to come all the way around because it's an interesting one. It's an interesting one. So this is the follow up to my 2-part. And look, I swear to fucking God, next week I will do something stupid and fun. I'll do another cryptozoology or something. But we just got to knock this out because this is kind of important, and this is always laid at our feet, right? So last week, as you guys mentioned, we delved a single German toe into what author Michael Sherlock calls the atheist atrocities fallacy when we dug into the lie that Hitler and his Nazis were atheists.
Yeah.
I think we very conclusively rolled over that faster than the Maginot line. He wasn't. They weren't. Don't let your Christian aunt on Facebook get away with that bullshit. So that leaves us with 3 of the other truly horrendous 20th century despots. And, there were tons of 20th century despots, but we're just picking a few.
The fun ones.
We're talking about the giants, right? The monsters of rock.
The Fab Four.
The Fab Four. So if ginormous body counts are what qualifies anyone for that nightmarishly exclusive club, and these 3 forged overtly atheist, quick note, that's also pretty complicated, communist regimes. Now that you can easily knock down your Christian aunt's Facebook assertion that the Nazis were atheists, they were not. Listen to episode 123. What about Joseph Stalin, Mao Zedong, and their crazy motherfucking country cousin, Pol Pot? How can a skeptic or atheist argue the charge that these regimes that killed tens of millions of people were atheist? And can we mount such a defense? Well, first, let's meet these 3 murderous shitbags one by one.
Yay!
First, Josip Bessarionis Djugashvili, more commonly known by his stage name, Stalin, meaning man of steel.
I didn't realize that was what that was.
Yeah, not covering for any insecurities there.
If Stalin means man of steel, what does Putin mean?
Man of poo.
Spider-Man.
Before becoming a street thug and robber in the service of the Russian Communist Party he would one day rule, Stalin was an above-average student at an Orthodox church-run prep school and later voluntarily enrolled in a seminary in the pursuit of becoming an Orthodox priest, where he spent 5 years studying before declaring his atheism, joining the Bolsheviks, overthrowing the Tsar, and in a few short years winning a power struggle to succeed Vladimir Lenin as the supreme leader of the officially atheist Soviet Union in 1929.
It mirrors my own story so creepily.
Dan's like, hold up. Who are we talking about here?
It's like I'm looking in a mirror here.
I think you will find this entire segment is me holding up a mirror to you, Uncle Dan.
Yeah,
so
probably.
Strap in. So he gained his position in 1929 and held it until his death in 1953. During that time, he unleashed all manner of terrors on his own people, from purges to famines to deportations and forced labor, etc., not even counting the stupendous loss of Russian life in the Second World War. He is responsible for a hard-to-pin-down number of deaths in his country that are in the many tens of millions.
So above 6, at least.
Well, probably. I think the high estimate is 45 million or something like that of non-war deaths. But I think more people think it's conservative 30.
It's amazing when you round off to the nearest 5 million.
Right.
You know you've really hit it.
You've achieved something.
Yeah, it's white label level of achievement.
Yeah, so talk about government goods and services, this guy. So second, Mao Zedong. The only one of these three devils that didn't change his name via some road to Damascus moment, this son of a prosperous peasant joined the ranks of young Chinese intellectuals who were fed up with the feudal abuses of the crumbling old King dynasty, with its brutal landlords and the lawlessness of rural warlords. They were also enraged by the thefts and humiliations that China had long suffered at the hands of Western colonial powers, who seized all of China's ports and profits, and in repayment, gifted the Chinese with aggressive, culturally erasing Christian missionaries, which they were rudely less than grateful for.
It is rude.
It's so rude. Mao weathered and basically won a horrendous civil war, became a legend with his 6,000-mile-long march, battled the nightmarish Japanese incursions and massacres of the Second World War, finally declaring himself the head of the officially atheist People's Republic of China in 1949, a post he held until his death in 1976. His brutal policies and idiotic miscalculations led to the deaths of several tens of millions of civilians. His creation is the only one of these three political systems still in place today, having celebrated its 70th anniversary. You're 70 years young, China. Keep it up. Third,
I just love the idea of declaring yourself the leader of the country.
I do. I love that.
You have to be positioned right for it, but there's going to be a moment when I'm going to do it. I'm going to declare myself the leader of this country.
Would you do it? You do it soon.
You're going to pull. You're going to pull a Super Del Shanzi and just go for it, huh?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, even Uncle Dan is probably better than Trump, which is saying a lot.
I fucking go for it.
I'll take that risk.
Vote. Third, Seloth Tsar, also known as Brother Number One, and most famously, Pol Pot. He was also the son of a prosperous farmer in the lovely Cambodian countryside. He, too, attended religious schools as a boy, first spending 18 months as a novice Buddhist monk, and then 6 years in a French Catholic primary school. He had family connections to the royal household of French-occupied Cambodia and lived a relatively privileged young life. In the years after World War II, a period that was, for many reasons, hugely disruptive to both colonial France and Cambodia, Pol Pot was studying in Paris. He joined communist student groups and tried to read Marx, but found it too difficult to understand. Me too, Pol Pot. Me too. But he found the more accessible, belligerent writings of our friend Joseph Stalin an enjoyable read somehow. Having been kicked out by the Japanese, France reclaimed Cambodia as a colony after the war. This was a seriously agitating event to young Cambodian leftists like Pol Pot. He headed home, got involved in politics, and a few zigs and zags later found himself and his little gang exiled to the forest, where they spent a few years getting way into their own fevered heads and came up with some ideas that they should have thought through a little bit more.
Wow, in the forest. That's crazy.
Yeah, they were huddled up in a very remote region on the Thai border. So by the early 1970s, the destabilizing clusterfuck of the utterly pointless American war in neighboring Vietnam and its spillover violence in neutral Cambodia was the spark needed to unleash Pol Pot and his Khmer Rouge, which just means the red Khmer. That's their national identity, the Cambodian people. The red Khmer Rouge, a regular army on the weak, U.S.-backed government of President Lon Nol and the figurehead king. Pol Pot declared himself, much like Dan is about to, the head of state of the newly christened Democratic Kampuchea in 1976. Despite this clause in the new constitution, and I quote, "Every citizen of Kampuchea has the right to hold any belief in religion and has as well the right to have neither belief nor religion. Any reactionary religion interfering with democratic Kampuchea and her people is strictly prohibited," end quote. The Khmer Rouge aimed to eradicate all colonial religions and its local brand of Theravada Buddhism completely. Well, wow. Almost completely, and there's a very important almost. Okay, now we've met the cast, let's get down to the plot. Were these fuckers atheists? It's clear from the declarations and writings of both Stalin and Mao, yes, they very much were. In the case of the weirdly quiet and reclusive Pol Pot, no evidence of his personal declarations of atheism can be found, so his personal convictions can't be proven conclusively. Were the nations these fucks forged in oceans of blood, or their fanatically devoted followers atheists? This is where it gets sticky and nuanced, and we all know your Christian aunt on Facebook does not do nuance, so this might be a losing battle with her, but not every battle worth fighting can be won, I think Braveheart said. Or not, whatever. So, history is really just a record of reactions or overreactions to whatever the previous reaction to the thing before that was. It's the macro version of individual human nature. Groups of humans normally act in ways individuals might in similar situations or to similar stimuli. The communist movements and revolutions of the 20th century were just that, reactions to what came before them. And what was up in Russia, China, and Cambodia that these three fellas were reacting to? Well, in Russia, the Romanov monarchy and the fraction of the 1% that had any money or food in the country were carrying on like the party would never end, while the masses suffered and toiled like animals and were treated as less than that. And helping prop up this unsupportable, bloated monarchy was the bloated tick of the Russian Orthodox Church. It was as eager to suck every last red blood cell out of the general population as the clueless aristocracy was, and they made sure to put the fear of eternal hellfire into the masses every Sunday should they ever dare to question the system God had ordained them to live short and brutal lives in. In China, the deteriorating power of the emperor had long ago lost the love of the toiling peasantry, and their only interface with the monarchy were brutal tax collectors and ruinous landlords from which there was no protection. On top of that, the constant war and political strife of the 20th century, along with the theft and abuses of foreign imperial powers and their aggressive Christianity, and the prevailing religious philosophy that boiled down to, you deserve whatever shit you get, was leading society to a breaking point of some kind. And in Cambodia... Of the good
kind, really. I mean, it's that can only go well.
Well, it's kind of worked out in a funny way, but in Cambodia, the long, fairly stable co-rule of the monarchy and the Theravada Buddhist priest class had been seriously upended by French colonialism and the overspill of American mechanized bombardment from Vietnam. And like in Russia and its parasitic Orthodox Church, the recently deposed monarchy had been cemented in place with the cooperation of the Buddhist order.
You're welcome.
You're so welcome. And like in Cambodia, the other two countries had been struggling badly with modernization and technology, encroaching on ossified and archaic systems of government. So, armed with the ideas of the triumph of the working class and tearing down everything that oppressed it, obviously the communists tore down the state. And when the church is just another instrument of state enforcement, basically indistinguishable from the state, you fucking tear that down too.
Which, by the way, Russia's right back to that now.
Yep. Yeah, and the Orthodox Church has come roaring back under their new czar, right?
Yep.
In similar ways, and in all the varying local flavors we've discussed, each of these three monstrous personalities entered the world stage in a fugue of destruction, but it was in pursuit of a utopian creation. And each one of them, while overtly destroying the old ways, found operating systems in place that the mostly rural masses of their respective countries had been programmed to respond to. Where Hitler left the church essentially in place and co-opted it intact to achieve his ends, these air quotes atheist despots smashed most of the hardware but found the software of great use. In his very prescient 1938 treatise, Politischen Religionen, philosopher Erich Vogelin coined the term political religion to describe the emerging totalitarian regimes of the early 20th century. Vogelin contends that the demand for total societal change they represented is in fact a spiritual movement. So radical were their demands, especially in the Cambodian case, that all aspects of life fall under the central control of the state, that they could not have even been partially effective without a sort of deification of the charismatic leadership. George Orwell, as deep a thinker about totalitarianism in theory and practice as this world has ever produced, wrote in 1946 that, from a totalitarian point of view, history is something to be created rather than learned. A totalitarian state is in effect a theocracy, and its ruling caste, in order to keep its position, has to be thought of as infallible. But since in practice no one is infallible, it is frequently necessary to rearrange past events in order to show that this or that mistake was not made, or that this or that imaginary triumph actually happened.
Point of order, you say no one's infallible, but there's an entire country of North Korea that knows for a fact.
Well, now just pretend you didn't say that. We're going to get there. So as we know, no one is infallible, and it is generally not a word attributed to mortal men other than the baffling problem of two popes we have at the moment. So Stalin and Mao, seeing the path centuries of religious beatings and repression had burned for them in the minds of the servile masses, just pushed the statues and icons of religion off the altars and replaced them with the red star of international communism, and then in short order, their own images.
Yeah.
In an odd quirk, Pol Pot didn't play at that level. He didn't really develop the same cult of personality. In his case, the particular fatalism that Theravada Buddhism had bred into generations of the Khmer people allowed him and his very tiny, very mysterious inner circle, there were only 3 of them, to replace the enlightened super beings of the Buddhist practice as dark corollaries shrouded in the depths of the Cambodian wilderness. Pol Pot biographer Philip Short wrote of the Buddhist-like communist hell of democratic Kampuchea, and I quote, dreary and joyless as it was, certainly, but that was what its leaders intended. Theravada Buddhism taught that nirvana, the realm of selflessness, could be attained only when the, quote, thirst for existence, made up of worldly and emotional attachments, had been totally extinguished. Under Pol Pot's rule, love, sorrow, anger, passion, and all the other feelings that made up everyday life were seen as emanations of individualism to be banished for the collective good. In some parts of the country, it was forbidden even to laugh or sing. In pursuit of illumination, the people had to suffer. So, just for a quick note, for those who might not know, the hyper-radical programs of the thankfully short-lived Pol Pot regime meant to totally reorder all of society overnight. And to them, that required evacuating the cities of every single person, separating families from each other permanently, segregating men from women, and forcing everyone into subsistence agrarian slavery to purify them of their prior lives. Anyone suspected of foreign influence was killed outright, along with tens of thousands of monks. The old became instantly suspect, and the power over life and death were granted to newly minted 15 and 16-year-old army officers who doled out the death sentence for real or imagined infractions or no infractions at all. 1/4 of Cambodia, that's about 2 million people, were randomly murdered or starved to death in under 4 years.
Wow.
So, in God is Not Great, our friend and writer Christopher Hitchens addresses what some would call the atheist atrocities fallacy and the phenomenon of political religions head-on, writing, communist absolutists did not so much negate religion in societies that they well understood were saturated with faith and superstition as seek to replace it. The solemn elevation of infallible leaders who were a source of endless bounty and blessing, the permanent search for heretics and schismatics, the mummification of dead leaders as icons and relics, the lurid show trials and that elicited incredible confessions by means of torture. None of this was very difficult to interpret in traditional terms, nor was the hysteria during times of plague and famine when the authorities unleashed a mad search for any culprit but the real one. And of course, my note here is the culprit was very often them, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a brief summation of the issue from the increasingly hard to love Sam Harris. People of faith often claim that the crimes of Hitler, Stalin, Mao, and Pol Pot were the inevitable product of unbelief. The problem with fascism and communism, however, is not that they are too critical of religion. The problem is that they are too much like religions. Such regimes are dogmatic to the core and generally give rise to personality cults that are indistinguishable from cults of religious hero worship. Auschwitz, the Gulag, the killing fields were not examples of what happens when human beings reject religious dogma. They are examples of political, racial, and nationalistic dogma run amok. So, these air quotes atheist dictators removed a remote, capricious, unpredictable God that people were trained to be afraid of and replaced it with a very real, very much more dangerous man-god who demanded unquestioning, even hysterical veneration, and in most cases demanded even greater tribute in tax, toil, physical, spiritual, and intellectual freedom than the vague god they replaced.
Yeah.
Their portraits and spies watched over you while you worked and slept, and it was by Comrade Stalin or Brother Number One's good graces you were given life and sustenance. And this is called atheism? All three of these men ordered programs for which all scientific, sociological, and statistical evidence was clearly to the contrary, causing some of the greatest famines ever, economic collapse, military calamity, and near societal implosion. And this is evidence of rationalism or evidence of, any kind of reason at all? No, I don't think it is.
Well, I don't think that atheism has to be rational, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, but if one of the definitions of atheism is rationalism or reason, none of these are that, right?
Right, indeed.
So these were irrational, anti-intellectual hellscapes driven by reactionary, egomaniacal, political fundamentalists immune to reason who could not rest until they reshaped society in their twisted personal images, like the God of the Old Testament. They were all reacting violently to the atrocious abuses of the church-state machinery that preceded them. Any level of violence and human suffering was acceptable to create their vengeful, nightmarish utopias. These were not intellectually curious, skeptical men searching for rational, reasonable solutions that would do the most good for the least harm. And as Dan was alluding to, if atheism can be described as a search for reasonable explanation to life's questions, this shit wasn't it. Quoting Harris again, "There is no society in human history that ever suffered because its people became too reasonable." Right. So let's end on this little test of how to tell if something's from a godless communist dictatorship or a classic religious deity myth. You ready, fellas?
Well, this is a multiple choice episode, isn't it?
Crazy sort of day.
Yeah. So how would you categorize a being whose birth on a sacred mountain affected a double rainbow to appear above it, and cause birds to sing their praises in human language, and the dead of winter suddenly turn into the blossoming of spring, and upon whose birth appeared a new star in the heavens? A being who never once urinated or defecated, who could change the weather on a whim, who wrote 1,500 perfect books and 6 perfect operas in just 3 years at college. A being who could drive at age 3, made 11 holes in one on their first golf game, cured both AIDS and Ebola personally, and invented the hamburger? If you guess this being is a god, you're 1/3 correct, because these are the 4 real claims made by the officially atheist government of communist North Korea about their now holy trinity of portly man gods, the Kim family.
Yes, indeed.
Is this atheism? If atheism means a lack of belief in gods, I'm going to go with no. Is it religion? I mean, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
I'm sure if anyone's ever seen the videos of the people crying in the wake of Kim Il-sung's death,
Yeah.
that's the most religious society the world's ever produced.
Yeah, I mean, I've read accounts of people leaving North Korea and years later still being afraid that Kim Jong-un would be able to read their minds, know where they are, and zap them somehow.
Wow.
That's supernatural belief, right?
Yeah.
That's an irrational belief in God. So, what would I tell your crazy Christian on Facebook about Stalin, Mao, and Pol Pot? Were they personally atheists? She gets a qualified 2 out of 3 on that. Were the movements these 3 inspired atheists? To paraphrase Uncle Dan a few shows back, you can you really be an atheist if you consider yourself God? And are your followers really atheist if they think you are? And that's a no from me, dog. So that's told you it was nuanced. It's a little bit weird, but it's not an affirmative yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
A fascinating apologetic to squirrel our way out of being associated with those guys. I like it.
Yeah. It's a real snappy, quick one, isn't it?
Yeah. We need to work on that. We need to work on the messaging maybe a little, but that's okay.
Yeah, well, not all of life's answers can be delivered in a tweet, I'm sorry to say. I've tried. So there you go, fellas.
Well, thanks.
That was great.
Uncle Mark, we appreciate you, and let's move on.
Moving on.
Let's move on.
Well, friends, that's it for this week's Blood Soaked Show.
Hey, if you have an apologetic for why women should run into fires, we'd love to hear from you. Send an email at howto@howtoheretic.com.
Or if you're one of the 20th century's worst despots that feels left out because I didn't get to you, leave me a voicemail at 903-88-HOW-TO, which is 903-884-6986. You can also genocide me on Twitter at HowToHeretic.
And thanks to our awesome patrons.
And thanks to Cody Layton for both editing the show and never killing 30 million people.
And thanks to you, dear friends, for tuning in.
Bye, friends.
Bye-bye.